Hello, welcome back to Otter Pop Culture. Today we're going over the HBO Max original series called It's a Sin. This is the 12th episode of Movie Monday. So we're gonna jump right to it. So this pretty much is a chronological, about the four friends who pretty much during a decade figure out like their life as gay people and at the same time during the rise of AIDS. So this is taking place in London in 1981. So this was also created by Russell T. Davies. He's the one that did the UK version of Queer as Folk, but also I think he had it. I think I know that he had a hand inside the US version of it too. And apparently this is really based off, this is something that he wanted to do for a very long time, and this is lightly based off of his situation, not its specific situation, more his surroundings of what happened during his time in London and this time. So it's a very, very short but very powerful show. Like, it's just amazing. I loved every bit of it. I had so many different thoughts about it throughout the whole time, because it had that feeling of Queer as Folk where you have that, like, there's things happening that are serious, that are going on, but there's a lot of things that are happening that are not serious at all. They're much more, that's a lot of fun, that makes you feel like, almost like a sitcom in the direction, but obviously this is supposed to be a very short-term thing, which is, it sucks, 'cause I wish it was stretched out a little more so we can see more process of how like Richie or Roscoe or Jill got into more their footing inside of London. And I feel like we still got a lot of stuff from them to love them enough to where we're sad when one of them like passes or so on. Just so you know, since on that note, this is gonna be completely spoiler. A lot of spoilers are gonna be in this, so you haven't seen it, go see it. Check it out. I really highly recommend it. I think it's something that we need, and I'll tell you why after this alert. But spoiler alert completely. I'm going to tell you a lot of things, not everything, because I do want people to get into it and figure out their own little thoughts about it. But yeah, so you've been warned. So, and this pretty much is, this show takes place with 4 to 5 people. So you have Richie, who is a guy that came from, which is, I'm not going to pronounce this right because I was not raised in the UK. So this is the Isles of Wight. He was raised there and he moved to London at 18, and so did Roscoe, who was also in a different place, who was with his family, who don't know that figured out that he's gay, and he's like, fuck you all, I'm going. But Richie, on the other hand, is like, oh, I'm going for school, I'm going for arts, I'm not going to tell you what I'm doing, but I'm going there, but it seems like he knows, like, I'm gay, I know I'm gay, London's where it's where it's at. Pretty much that whole idea of, like, San Francisco, everybody was migrating to that direction, because it was a place where people felt, or where people, gay men mostly, felt very safe. And then we had Colin, who was coming from a much more, like, positive family, and he pretty much comes there at 18 as well, and lands a job immediately, but he gets sexually harassed by his boss, but he's saved by one of the co-workers that he works with, Henry, who's played by Neil Patrick Harris, NPH, and yeah, and it's really, really beautiful. Everything's going well with their like friendship, because Henry introduces him to his partner, and they're on the everybody's technically in the closet. But the way that they live is like the idea, like it gives Colin kind of hope, like, oh, there's a space where we can live a normal life kind of thing. But of course that really gets pulled right under him when both Henry and his partner ends up being diagnosed with AIDS, but we don't know it's AIDS yet. And pretty much die within the end of the first episode, and it completely tore me apart. I was like, oh my god, what does this mean? And I should have just carried that with me, because I was like, oh no, they just want to it's just the first episode. First episodes get you very, like, into it, and very, like, you're the most highs and the most lows to get you, like, and take you to set the tone of what's going to happen. So throughout this whole throughout the whole 4 episodes, you get like the rise of AIDS as it's happening, and a lot of deniers. So you have like Richie, who's one of the main characters, who's like denying all this. It's like it's just a conspiracy, blah blah blah. It's not really happening. Like how could a disease target only gay men? Which, and the idea of that was in a weird way was a very interesting question, because but it wasn't technically it wasn't entirely targeting us per se more than it was targeting mostly us, because it definitely spread over to the black community. It definitely spread over to other people too, especially with the down low, the DL people that were like got men that were fucking guys on the side while they're still married. Like, it's a lot of stuff like that Pose touches on, but they kind of lightly they touch it on their own little like way. So yeah, I just over time you see that, and you start seeing like Roscoe, who's bestly kind of getting into this like relationship with this guy that has a lot of money. So he's in this kind of like sexual relationship with this guy. It's a lot of serious points, but at the same time you get a lot of happy things happening. Like Richie decides he wants to do not modeling, acting, and he actually is pretty good at it. So he's starting to get roles, and he's starting to learn how it is to be an actor. And so is Jill figuring out how to be an actress herself, and they have a little like kind of cabaret performance that they do every night at this gay bar, and they all meet each other with Richie, Roscoe, Jill, and Colin, with additional Ash, who's friends with Jill. They become the people that live together all in one place, because I think Roscoe starts to have a thing with the landlord at this place, and that ends up sprouting out just the 3 of them, Richie, Roscoe, and Jill live together. Ash adds in, and then finally Colin comes in at the end. He's like, I am looking for a place, because the place that I'm staying at like closes their doors at 10, so I have to be home at 10, and it's kind of too much. Like, so he pretty much moves in with them, and it becomes this whole like spot. Like, their whole space becomes like a after party spot for after the clubs, and then they have a little kind of like introduction with each other. So whenever they see each other or going off to work, they go la, and then they go off to work, and it's really really cute. And that's just that little pieces of it made me feel like, okay, this could easily be a 5 seasonal like season thing, like Queer as Folk, that kind of direction. And it felt very like coming of age in the same way, which it technically was, but it just sucks that it just stopped. It just was so short, but so impactful. Like, apparently so impactful that it created a huge upsurge in HIV testing in the UK. So that's really, really cool. I have some notes I want to cover. So we start seeing things going wrong, starting with Jill. She goes over to a friend, Gary, aka Gloria, who's having some sick issues, and we're not really sure why, but she's starting to climb, and he's thinking what she's thinking, and she's thinking what he's thinking, that might be AIDS, what they're talking about. So she starts doing research, she gets Colin to join in with the research, and they definitely start seeing, like, this is a real thing. But Richie's denying it, but he's also inside having this, like, feeling, because he starts getting a relationship with this guy, and who's also an actor, and they try to have sex with a condom, but it doesn't work out. So he's like, I trust you. So they do it, and the next day, the guy's like putting on his shoes or something, or leaning over with his shirt off, and he looks down and sees a big old black spot on the back of his back, and he's like, you can see his face, his wheels are starting to turn, and like, oh, okay, like, this is actually real. And you start seeing that kind of thing, and I feel like Richie is the best direction of most men that I've seen just on the documentaries and everything that I've read and looked at, that there was a good handful of people that were like, Richie is just like, nope, that's not a thing. How could it just be for us? Like, that's not a thing. And deny, because the idea, as he says at the very end when he gets diagnosed as well, he's like, people will never understand. They always will see this tragedy of this time. They'll think it was horrible. Everybody was just feeling it, but they don't understand how fun it was at the same time. Before the AIDS started kicking in even more. The AIDS crisis kicked in more. Like before, it was just so much fun to be out and gay and in the closet, but you had a lot of ways to figure out how to know who is this who and who is this what, and and just like, and I think that it was just a sexual revolution for our community that but all people look back in the 80s for gays were just like, oh, everybody started dying. And I was like, yes, it's true, but there still were so many things that are happening for us in that community. A couple of other ones. Oh yeah, so another spoiler thing is that Colin ends up also getting diagnosed too, and he ends up dying, but it's like, you start seeing that each person that does die has a rare cancer that happens, so they're kind of figuring out whether it's like the parents and even the doctors is like, okay, so it's cancer, but how could it be cancer? Like, actually, not the doctors know, but the parents are trying to figure out, and the friends are figuring out, it's like, if it's cancer, why is he getting cancer? He's never had cancer before, or, oh, but they're figuring out it's because of HIV moving into AIDS, and it sucks because Richie had HIV, and when he went to go get tested, he backed out and just left in the middle of, before they called him, or during the time they called him, he just didn't respond. And he just denied, and then he finally was like, I need to go do it. So he goes to do it, and pretty much he gets signed up. So he's like, well, and she's like, well, it was HIV, but it seems like it escalated to AIDS now. Like, we're past the point of doing anything that we're doing before. You're in the AIDS direction. And it sucks, because it's just like, well, fuck. Because there was some saving pieces. And of course, his mom comes in who doesn't know he's gay, and so everything kind of just comes out in one flow at the hospital while he's dying, and she's like just going a complete rampage about like, how did I know? How could I not know? Blah, 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 blah. And meanwhile, like some of the other women, like, and Jill and some of the moms that were supportive, or the Colin's mom was just like, how could you not know? Like, what were you doing when he was 5? What were you doing when he was 12? What you were doing when he was 16? Just going in on her, and I thought it was so great. I felt so great inside, because that's something that you don't really see in a lot of queer spaces where they talked about the AIDS, like, movies kind of thing. Like Philadelphia, they barely touched on that. Like, it was like the way that people made you feel, like the way that you don't, like, it also touching on the idea of shame also, in the way that Richie never told her because he was ashamed of it. He never went to the doctor because he was ashamed of it. And then it gets to the very, very end where she's like, or not very end, but it gets to a point where the mom is so overwhelmed over all of this is happening, and she's not taking any responsibility for how she had raised him, especially the dad. The dad was a dick, but he also showed the most emotion, which was kind of awkward, because I was like, okay, I guess you did love him. But she ends up taking him back to their house, and it's just like, or back to their house, about to the family house, and Jill and Roscoe go to follow her to like visit him, and she's like denying any access to Jill and Roscoe meeting him, or meeting Richie while he's not getting properly taken care of at home, because she thinks she can do it better than the doctors in London who are actually more involved with the whole thing. And of course, so Jill's calling every day. She's like, I'll call every day until I get that, until you give us access to him so we can see him, so we say goodbye or anything, And Richie's even asking for them. She's like, to mom, you're like, you don't understand. Like, it was so fun before all this. I need to see them before anything else, And she doesn't allow that. But the next day, she meets up with Jill, and she's like, at this like bridge, and she's like, so I might have overreacted. And bless Jill throughout this whole thing. She's one of my favorite characters, but bless her so much, because she was so much patience with how she was breaking it down, that he was gay in a hospital, to, I'm gonna hear you out completely on the bridge, even though I'm fuming of how mad I am over this issue. And the mom's like, I might have overreacted. She's like, okay, well, since you said that, can we see him? And she's like, he died last night. And it's just like, and I can tell she's definitely feeling regretful but it's one of the things is like it's so far too late that this is needed. So of course Jill goes in and she's like, first of all, she's like, yeah, well, it is your fault. It's your fault that he died. It is your fault that he got AIDS. It's your fault that the people that he gave it to died as well. It's your fault. And we're like, and she's like, how would I have to know? It's like, how did you not know? You know, it's this whole thing. It's just like they pretty much made a picture saying that you had this thought of how he's supposed to look like, how he's supposed to be, that you didn't even think about who he actually is. So in that case, yes, it is your fault. And she just walks away, and she's like, I didn't know. It's like, bullshit, you know? So anyway, so it goes into the part where Roscoe ends up not getting it, thank God, but not that it really makes anything much better, because then of course Richie gets it, and Ash doesn't get it either, but it was so close. But yeah, it ends with them kind of like doing like a flashback of like a time before the AIDS crisis happened, where they're just hanging out at the park, and Richie's doing his lines for acting, and it's really, really beautiful, and it just really it broke my heart. Yeah, it's a very interesting video. So, show. It's a beautiful show. I recommend getting into it. It's something that I think that, as Russell said himself, is just like, a lot of people, we're moving so far away from the 80s, but we don't that a lot of new generational queer people do not remember the culture. And I believe, and I really want to be this person to say this, even if it's not heard, but I want to be able to say this. Look at our culture. If you are queer, if you're any of the spectrum of queer, start looking up the AIDS crisis, looking up how we grew up in the 80s, 70s, look into the 70s, like everything. Look at our history. Our culture needs to be remembered as something that's needs to be reminded over and over again. And I feel like there's this Hollywood media that's like, oh, okay, we did enough aid things for them. We did a lot of justice for them. No, they didn't. They didn't do enough, because each generation needs to know the history, so they know where we came from. You know how much they know what not to take for granted. So there's some people that just are complete assholes to elderly queers people, and they're like, hey, you're old. It's like, no, they're elderly people that needs respect, because they open that platform for us to be able to walk around and wherever we want to wear, non-binary can be free to be who they are, that we can actually see the actual subcultures of our umbrella of queer community. So please do your research, and listen to people when they give you these type of thoughts and stories. There's so much stories to be told. That's pretty much it. I give this a 5 out of 5 easily, because it was perfection. Leave a comment below, tell me what you thought. If you like this video, hit the like button and the subscribe button and the notification button too, so you get more of my videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next video.